Rivers of Carbon is a good news program. It's a program that empowers people to do something about climate change on their place.
Eventually, I imagine that in 100 years' time, and it's going to take that long, we'll look back and say, this was the moment when all this started. You know, there was this moment when we suddenly had this different relationship with rivers and the landscape.
The messy areas along rivers and creeks and wetlands, they're really important for wildlife. The small birds love them, all the lizards, the bats, gliders, antechinus, the list goes on.
And we're learning, aren't we, Alan?
You bring together people's passions. Everybody has a passion when of their land, and they come along and they see something you do. You've got a passion, and they get fired up. They go home. You go into their place. They're fired up, and it's a domino effect.
The idea came to us after a conference that we attended a few months ago, where colleagues of ours were saying that whenever they went out to talk to landowners, they kept feeling like they were saying, but we don't want it neat and tidy, we want it messy. And we thought, well, that must be pretty confusing for landowners who think they're doing the right thing by having a neat and tidy place. So we thought, well, let's run a workshop that deliberately asks that question. Why do we want to mess it up and slow it down?
Over the last 150 years, I suppose most of the endeavour of humans in Australia has been in unmessying the rivers, neatening them up, making them tame, protecting humans from rivers really, which is a process of you channelise them to reduce flood impacts, you reduce erosion, you remove wood, all of the things that make rivers messy and inconvenient, we've tended to remove those. So in the process, we have lost complexity essentially.
A messed up river system is actually one that's really high in biodiversity and it's sequestering carbon. So our Rivers of Carbon project is about those two things, biodiversity but also locking up that carbon and getting it into our riparian zones.
Traditionally, you know, apart from food and water resources that people need to survive, river systems such as attracting the animal and plant life to those ecosystems is very important for health, for sustainability, nutrition, but also for the richness of well-being of a community.
There's been a lot of degradation at my farm because of the practices that happened.
I've come to give a little talk about what I do along the river banks and what I'm doing in the paddocks and what I'm doing to help restore the land.
I remember walking over it when I was 17 and I just thought, God, how are we going to fix this, you know? And hi everyone, we're here at Australind today at the wetlands that I was talking to you about the other night. This wetland has been in existence since about 2008. Well, it started forming in 2008, and because of the earthworks that the Lachlan Catchment Management had done, and this is a fantastic result. And now it houses lots of species of frogs. The amount of trees we've got here, we're just getting an abundance of birds. It's a fantastic little environment. I'm seeing it in my lifetime, and it's been, 8 years, so that's fantastic. So, you know, I'm not going to be around for a lot longer, so I hope to see a lot more improvements on Australind. I think nature actually gets going really quickly, but I think water's the key.
In a lot of some of these systems, 25% of the carbon in the landscape can be in the river corridor, even though it's only 1% of the landscape. A whole lot of nutrient processing, a lot of fundamental water quality depends on the messiness and the complexity of these systems.
The Rivers of Carbon program is a good one because it's linking these ideas about climate change and biodiversity and other key issues all together, so that when we look after rivers, creeks and wetlands, that we're not just doing it for one thing or the other. We're considering those big picture issues all together.
people want to know, and people want to get their hands dirty. People just can't get enough of knowledge that's out there, and you feel like you've got a bunch of people around you, comrades, so to speak, environmental comrades, and you think, yep, I'm not in this alone.
So over the years we've had Bidgie Banks, and then we've had things like river recovery in Boorowa and Yass and other places, and now finally, after developing all the methodologies behind it, we've got Rivers of Carbon, which actually brings in all the social and the economic benefits to river rehabilitation. And we're talking over 500 farmers that have been involved in these programs just in the Southern Tablelands. So very successful model.
If we can appreciate the real value of carbon and storing it, then it becomes a resource as well for landholders, and it means that all of these benefits we're doing aren't just done as a matter of charity or sort of goodwill, they're actually a fundamental and good business decision.
Basically, stop trying to fight nature and manipulate it. Work with it. Messie's good. What a great take-home message that is. And don't ever lose sight of your goals. You know, when you see people with the degradation they had on their property, and little bit by little bit they chip away at it, and the end result is just amazing.